Hi, I'm Chris from CodeReviewVideos.com, and in this video we're going to get started implementing our test-driven approach to wallpaper update and delete. Before we can get started, we need to do a little bit of maintenance, and the reason for this is that the differences between our tested and untested approaches around the way that uploaded files work is slightly different. So when we're working with our test-driven approach, we're having to wrap the concept of Symfony's uploaded file, whereas when we're working with our untested approach, we can directly work with Symfony's uploaded file. Now, if none of that makes sense to you, then I'd strongly advise you to watch previous videos where we've covered this in greater depth. But as I say, there is a little bit of maintenance that we need to do to get started. So I'm going to do a git checkout of the code as it was at the end of video 26, and I'm going to put that into a new branch, which I'm just going to call tested wallpaper edit. Now, in video 27, we covered ways of improving our fixtures, and what I'd like to do is incorporate some of those changes from video 27 into this branch. So rather than making you sit through all those changes, what I'm going to do, just copy them from a pre-existing starting point which I've already made ahead of this video. I'll link to this in the show notes, but essentially what this is going to do is bring us as we were roughly in video 27, but with some additional changes around how a file is constructed. So in this version, we're wrapping Symfony's uploaded file with our own Symfony uploaded file. And again, if this doesn't make sense to you, then please do watch previous videos, as I can't cover that in any further depth in this one. So I've taken a copy of that, and I'm going to jump into source, at bundle, data fixtures, under load wallpaper data. It's going to delete everything that's in there and paste in that new version. And again, just to be absolutely clear, all we're really doing is wrapping Symfony's uploaded file with our own version. Now, as we saw in video 27, what we also need to do is take a copy of the images and move them into our data fixtures. Probably need to do a little bit of tidy up here, just delete the ones that I don't want, and make sure that the images directory itself still exists, even though it's empty. Okay, with that amount of setup done, what we should be able to do now is a PHP bin console doctrine database drop force. Then we'll do a database create. We'll do a doctrine migrations migrate. And finally, we'll do a fixtures load. And this is the step that we've just done all that hard work for. So now we'll just make sure that our tests are passing still. So we're in vendor, bin, PhpSpec, run, and we have our passing test suite. Perfect. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to describe, you can shorten that to desk, the concept of our file transformer. So we'll say at bundle form data transformer file transformer, and apologies that that's spanned onto 2 lines there. That's pretty much how it looks, or would look on any normal screen size. So I'll hit return there, which creates our spec. And to make things as easy as possible here, I'll just run it. And she says, yes, do you want me to create that? I'm going to say, yes, I do. And let's clear that off as it's getting messy. And then we can jump inside here, pull up our spec. So under form, data transformer, file transformer spec. Don't need the fixtures anymore. And open up the form, data transformer, file transformer. Okay, so I'll just tidy them up a touch. Split this one vertically, close that one down, close the sidebar down. And before we go too much further, let's go back to GitHub, go to the project itself, and change into the tag as it was when we finished video 31. Take a look at source, at bundle, form, data transformer, and then the file transformer. And this is pretty much what we're about to copy. Okay, so firstly we know that it's going to implement data transformer interface, and as a result we'll need the transform and reverse transform methods. Let's add this information into our tests. So we'll say this should implement data transformer interface, making sure that it's got the right use statement in there, which it seems to have, and then we'll add in a couple of tests that says it can transform and it can reverse transform. And if you keep seeing me type in transformer, then yeah, blame my misspent youth watching lots of cartoons. Anyway, so what we'll say is it can transform. So this, when we call transform, and it will be given a file, then it should return an array that has a key called file and whatever we pass in as the file argument. So we'll set our file at the top here. In this case, we'll just say it's null. So what we should expect is that when we call transform with null, it should return an array with the key of file and the value of null. Now it might be nice also to have another test here that says when this is a string or similar, it doesn't matter that it's not actually the file instance in any way. We're just testing it with different types, just seeing that we always get the expected outcome. Now likewise, we're going to do the same for reverse transform, and we'll say this reverse transform. When given some data, well, let's just quickly take a look at what we expect. So our reverse transform gets given an array of data, and all we want to do is return whatever's set under the key of file. So if file is null, then we'll expect to get back a null. If file is ABC, we expect to get back ABC. So let's put that into our tests. So we'll say we'll have a variable called data, which is an array, which has a key called file, which has a property of null. And so in this instance, reverse transform of data should return null. Likewise, we'll copy that down and we'll set file to be 123. In fact, we'll set to ABC just to be different, and we'll say ABC. And that looks pretty good so far, I guess. Let's see what we get when we run our tests. So I'm going to do run, and this time I'm going to be specific about which one we're running. So an app bundle file form, data transformer. We should only have one, the file transformer spec. And I've made a mistake in there somewhere. Apologies, missed off a semicolon. Okay, so it is initializable. We expect it to be instance of data transformer, but we're not. We also expected a transform and a reverse transform. We don't have any of them. Let's just say yes, we want to create the transform function, and yes, we want to create the reverse transform function. Okay, so we've got some issues here which we need to work through, but it's done some of the work for us. So we'll implement data transformer interface, rerun our tests. Okay, looking a little bit better. And in fact, as we already have an implementation, can we get away with just copying this whole thing in? Well, we're going to hit up on an issue straight away where we've got this concept of a logger. So get rid of the logger because, well, we're not too fussed about that. We covered that in the previous videos. We'll get rid of all of that. Be nice to sort these doc blocks out. In fact, for the moment, I'm just going to get rid of them because they're needlessly causing a bit of mess. Okay, let's try that. So you would expect at this point that our tests should all pass, which they do. Okay, so the only thing that I'm going to do in this class is just add in the doc blocks. But there's one other part of PhpSpec that I want to cover here. So we've got these tests where we're doing two tests under one function. And it's not something I like to do, honestly. So you can see it transform, etc. It can reverse transform, but we're doing two checks inside one test. Now, if you come from a different background in testing, say PHP unit, for example, this process is actually a little bit nicer. You can use something called a data provider. And what this will do is allow you to have an array of arrays, and each array that you pass in would be the arguments for the current test. Now, this is explained a little bit better in the write-up, so if unsure, please just check the write-up. Now, PhpSpec version 2 actually has this function. Well, it's a third-party module that you can bring in, but unfortunately PhpSpec 3, which we're using, does not have this functionality. And what this leads to is a situation where you can have sort of semi-misleading fails. Now, to illustrate this point, I'll change the code here to just return a null. So we're only concentrating on the it can transform, and we're not sort of taking any consideration now into the variable file. So we'll run our tests and we can see it can transform expected array 1 but got array 1, and that is a little bit misleading, honestly. It's not the most helpful in terms of error message because technically these look the same, so why isn't it passing? So what you have to do if in this situation is go back through, comment one out and run it. So yeah, we're getting a fail on that one. If we comment that one out and bring this one back into play and rerun our tests, now we have a pass. So we know now that we've singled out the failing bit of code, which is this second bit of logic here. So again, rerun that through, we can see that this one, it fails. And it fails because when we transform a file, we expect it to return back whatever's in this value here, which should be 123, but we're getting back null. But it works here because we're testing it with a null, so it's sort of a little bit misleading. Now, it would be nicer here, as I say, to be able to use a data provider, and a data provider in something like PHP unit would actually tell you which specific set of arguments that you pass in was the one that caused the fail. Instead, inside PhpSpec 3, as it stands at the moment, the way that I'm doing this, and this might be wrong, but the way that I'm doing it and it works, is just to have an _1, _2 variant, which is a bit meh in my opinion, but it's sort of, as I'll show you in one sec, it does actually highlight which particular test has failed a lot quicker than doing it where you go through and you're commenting bits out and whatnot. So let's just try that again. So we can see now it can transform 2, as I say, it's not the nicest in terms of method names or whatever, but it is actually telling us that it's this specific test that is failing. So again, we can just go back through there, make sure that that's returning the expected value. And this time we're back to passing tests. So there's still plenty more to cover, but hopefully that's been useful to you, and I shall see you in the next video.